Now let's return to our top story, and that passenger plane that crashed shortly after takeoff near an airport in Ahmedabad in Western India. More than 240 people were on board. It was headed for London, and there now appears to be at least one survivor, possibly more, among the passengers and crew after the plane disintegrated. Well, for the very latest, let's speak to Arise correspondent Lape Olarinoye, who joins me on the line from London. Thank you for joining us, Lape. Can you describe, first of all, what we know so far about what happened?
Well, in this tragic incident that took place earlier this morning, of course, local time in India was about 1:38 when this aircraft took off from Ahmedabad airport in the Gujarat part of India. It was said just after 30 seconds after it had taken off, it crashed into a building which was a hostel for medical students and completely imploded, as you can see there in that footage. Since then, of course, the whole region has gone into complete standstill. There was said to have been 242 people on that fatal flight. 169 of them were Indians, 53 of them were British nationals, 7 of them were Portuguese, and 1 of them was Canadian. Of course, it was heading for London Gatwick. And since then, we have seen... Sorry, I think I've lost you. Okay, I'm still with you. And since then, we have seen a continuous outpouring of reactions from around the world, especially in India. There's a search and rescue operation team there helping people to identify bodies and to also inform loved ones of where their potential loved ones could be. But actually, Charles, what's really extraordinary about this fatal crash is that there is one survivor, that survivor also being a British Indian national by the name of Mr. Ramesh. He was said in his own statement earlier, a couple of hours ago, was said that he escaped through the emergency door, doesn't recollect how, but remembers waking up and seeing bodies around him. He, of course, escaped unscathed. In fact, there are pictures and videos of him walking right out of the aircraft and being transported into a neighboring ambulance car, which, of course, he's now in hospital being treated for what looks like minor injuries. He has also been able to explain how quickly everything happened in his own personal account. He said that there was a loud noise 30 seconds after the aircraft took off, and he doesn't recollect anything since then. Of course, the whole world is in shock, particularly here in the UK, where many families with a large Indian community here in the UK were expecting some of their loved ones to arrive at London Gatwick around this time now. They're said to, of course, be in complete tatters. Their families are at Gatwick. Some people are speaking to a reception centre now, which is a makeshift one that has been created in Gatwick to respond to people's queries, people's concerns, and so on. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has expressed his devastation, and so has King Charles and the Queen.
Well, thank you for that update. Very comprehensive and very well articulated. This was, of course, Lape, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner plane. We understand Air India operates many of them, and it's usually a safe plane. So I imagine this is causing some concern in the aviation industry.
Certainly. In fact, that is the other angle of this. Apart from the sheer devastation and the lives lost, there's now a huge concern around the safety of Boeing. Actually, this is not the first time Boeing has crashed, but it's been a devastation because a reliable aircraft like Boeing, well used across the aviation industry, as well as used by lots of popular airlines. This, of course, has raised a lot of questions. In fact, it goes as so much as the UK's aviation investigation team have also been lended a hand to investigate into why, in collaboration with the Indian aviation investigation teams as well, I think are working together to establish why this devastation took place earlier today. This particular aircraft rather, was said to have began on this route just in 2023. Air India began using these Boeings in 2023. That information doesn't really point to any cause of concern, but actually aviation experts are saying that it might not necessarily be the aircraft, but actually human error in the way in which the takeoff took place. There's a lot of concern and observation around the wings and the flapping of the wings just from that video of the takeoff. But of course, that is too soon to come to any concrete conclusion, which is why these very thorough investigations will begin to take place and are very much underway as to why this horrible incident took place. And just on a side note here, Charles, whilst we're talking about the aviation, Air India is owned by the popular Tata Group. They, of course, have responded quite swiftly by saying that they will foot all the medical bills of some of the people that are currently being treated as a result of the plane crashing into a building, as well as they have promised to give the equivalent of £86,000 to all the families of people that have lost loved ones on this aircraft. Of course, that is absolutely nothing compared to the lives lost, but their swift response and the way in which the Indian aviation industry as a whole has responded to this has given some people some sort of hope of some form of closure as this tragedy continues to unravel.
Indeed, and I understand this flight route was very popular with Indians living in the UK, many of them from the Gujarati community in Leicester East, and many people there have used the flight route multiple times.
That's correct. In that part of the Midlands, the East and actually the West Midlands, there's a huge Indian population, particularly from this western region of India and the Gujarat region, who have said to have been taking these very popular routes. In fact, Charles, I know of somebody's sister who arrived on the very similar route in that same region just yesterday. She, of course, is shocked by how close this has happened to home. Leicester, of course, has responded. A lot of the Indian communities and communal centres there have responded, hoping that maybe, just maybe, one of their loved ones may have survived. But of course, the research and rescue operations have said that any chance of survival now is very, very slim. In fact, like I said, there's that one survivor that everybody is referring to and speaking to, and the remainder of the survivors happen to be those in that building. So the chances of that happening are unfortunately next to nothing. But those communities continue to offer support to their families who are waiting for them to arrive at Gatwick this evening, trying to manage emotions and to support loved ones, whether that's emotionally, financially, and in some cases mentally.
And just briefly, Lape, in addition to the people on board, many of whom, as you pointed out, were due to return to the UK, we understand that there were also casualties on the ground because the plane crashed into a residential area.
That's true. In fact, it wasn't just a residential area. It was a building that was housing medical students, a somewhat medical hostel. Some people say some of the reports that we're hearing is that some of those medical students had to flee for their lives as the aircraft came crashing through the wall. They had to leave their lunch as they were having lunch. Others had to jump out of buildings. One lady says that her child jumped from the second floor to escape the destruction that was coming his way. And that is the story of many people that woke up to that news this morning and into the afternoon. Many of them are currently living in complete chaos now. Fumes, ashes surround their neighboring areas and their homes, some of which are very much in hospital being treated at the moment. But there is somewhat a glimmer of hope for them because they weren't on that aircraft. But actually, it's a rude shock having to get up and just see that an aircraft has crashed into your place of work or where you live. The response, of course, has been swift. The ambulance services, the hospitals in that region are said to be treating a significant amount of people. But unfortunately, that death toll can still increase, as I say, as this continues to unravel.
Lape, I want to thank you very much indeed for your very meticulous reporting there. Lape Olarinoye is a RISE correspondent. She was talking to me on the line there from London.